So right now we only have one unbooked weekend all the way through the middle of May, which is pretty crazy to me. That's to look at the calendar of bookings at this point, which would generate $90,000 of rental in, top line, rents.
Yeah. So that's amazing. I'm like, is the math right? I mean, that's $90,000 in 6 months.
Wow.
That's $15,000 a month roughly in revenue. All right, I'm excited about this show. Welcome everybody to the Seattle Living and Wealth Building Podcast. So, buying an Airbnb is one of the hottest topics today. And on a prior episode, we brought in Lisa, who helped us see how you can take an initial zero down investment and turn it into a $1.4 million Airbnb investment. So, we're going to expand on that today. We're bringing in the big guns. We've got Adrian Bell, our Arizona realtor, who helped us out. He helped us find the Airbnb, and he's been helping us manage and run the Airbnb. Adrian, you want to introduce yourself?
Hey, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining us from sitting down here in Phoenix. Although we both have sun today, I hear, so that's kind of an anomaly. I've been in the real estate business down here in Phoenix since 2014. Started in the Airbnb sort of short-term rental business myself personally in about 2015. So it was pretty early days back then. And now have two of my own properties up in the White Mountains of Arizona, about 2 hours northeast of Phoenix. And I've been working with Lisa and Maynard. And are we letting the cat out of the bag about Justin?
Heck yeah.
Oh, yeah. Exciting.
Well, Justin, what's the cat out of the bag?
Yeah. Well, I'm excited. We just closed recently on a place in Phoenix. I can't help myself, but I need to copy Maynard with everything. So yeah, we were able to close just last Friday. Last Friday, and so we're super excited. We were down there a few days ago just to kind of work through the process of getting a good design going and start purchasing some furniture. So yeah, Adrian's going to be helping us at some point with once we get ours on the market as well. So
yeah,
awesome.
So exciting. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Congrats, buddy. And Michael, are you closing next week on your Airbnb?
I'm actually closing on 2 homes, one in Phoenix and one in San Diego. So yeah, I'm pretty excited.
Okay, we'll save that for the next episode. Well, cool. We also have Lisa here.
Hi. Thanks
Welcome
for
back,
having me
Lisa.
back. Yeah,
Welcome,
it's
Lisa.
exciting. It's only been a couple months, but I feel like a lot has happened in those couple of months.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
and today is your 6-month closing anniversary of the townhome. That got you to this. So
Oh, wow.
yeah,
Thanks, Mike.
Well, that's a good bit of Cliff Clavin
a little
knowledge there.
extra brownie points for the
Thank you.
boss there. Just, a little Eddie Haskell moment, but
Love it.
Okay, so it sounds like everybody's doing it. Everybody's Airbnb-ing, right? So what we want to cover in today's podcast is we want to cover exactly, what it takes to find one, decide on buying one, some tips, some stories from our journey and the lessons that we've learned, and, where should we start?
And get some of Adrian's expert knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. When we closed on the Airbnb, we arrived in Phoenix, pouring down rain. Did you have any regrets at that moment?
Did I?
Yes.
No, I was super excited. It was the beginning of our journey. It's kind of funny because looking back on our first weekend at that home, I think we walked away with more questions than we came into that weekend, like just a new home, learning about it, seeing all the work that needed to happen and thinking how in the heck are we going to get this done? But it was very exciting.
Well, I think it's no different than any other home buying journey, right? Like when you're talking about what you don't know, I mean, you're learning on the fly. I mean, obviously having Adrian as a resource was such a huge and imperative part of it. But, even with Adrian having all of his knowledge, I mean, I can't tell you, just simply this past week going down there and just, kind of going through the process of trying to figure out what's next, where you go from there. And that's kind of the hardest part of it all. So,
Well, I think, an interesting aspect of shopping for decorating and managing your own short-term rental is that you're not just shopping for yourself. when you look for a house, you think of yourself, right? As you should, because it's your investment. But it's an interesting overlay where you have to kind of matrix what you want with what you need to have in order for it to succeed. And I think what a lot of people do when it comes to short-term rentals, particularly when it's a second home for someone in a cloudier climate coming to a more resort climate like Phoenix, is they think of the things that they would want. And of course, the things that you want are what many people want when they come here for vacation. But you also have to remember the summer or the low season. Here, the summer is the low season. So what are the things that you need to have in that purchase that will flatten the demand curve down or keep the demand even year round versus having this huge peak in the peak season and the off season, which is tough. So it's an interesting dynamic to put yourself into where you're not just shopping for yourself. And we put together a little matrix where I interviewed both of you as buyers and asked you what you wanted in the experience for yourself. But then I overlaid what I know to be what people who come here all year round want. And it's not always just golf.
Really?
It's not laying in the pool on the lounger all day long?
It's definitely a key piece of it. But in order to make summer work, people usually don't come here in the summer to be outside. So it's an interesting dynamic, and it carries through the whole thing. Lisa, you were saying about once you bought the house, then about setting it up. Always have to remember, as we did through that whole exercise, is not just what you want, because that's obviously really important, but what will maximize the return. And that comes from what the guest wants. And so that overlay is important.
Yeah, and you did a really great job from the beginning helping us kind of profile the different types of guests that we thought were going to be utilizing our space and, keeping that lens in mind as we made different decisions along the way. It was extremely helpful.
So critical.
That was actually one of the things that I found most intriguing because, for my wife and Joanne and I, we were not... We went down to Phoenix over the holidays with the intention of looking at some places and trying to figure out whether it's what we really wanted to do. And I think one of the things I learned very quickly from Adrian was, it really isn't about, what is going to appeal to the masses when it's busiest down there. It's trying to bridge that gap, as Adrian said, and find that year-round demand. And so that was really kind of an eye-opening discovery for me. Because, I automatically think of, okay, the Waste Management Golf Tournament, that's going to be happening in a couple of weeks. And March is spring training down there, and it's just absolutely crazy. Whereas, June, July, August, September, they're kind of slower months down there. And, that's where there's an importance to have close proximity to hospitals and, just trying to really focus on other ancillary things that are not things I would normally have thought of. And I think that's the same for any market, candidly. We're talking about Phoenix right now. But I think, every market kind of has the things that are going to be more important for year-round demand.
That's really interesting, though, from an investment standpoint, where rather than focus on how to be the most competitive in the most competitive time, what is a successful Airbnb or what is a successful investment property? Like, you want it to be occupied as much as possible, right? So what's going to work in the downtime will probably also work for you in, the more competitive time. Interesting.
Yeah, and for our audience, to be clear, we were buying these specifically for investment. I think there's a lot of different reasons why people end up short-term renting, right? And so you can go at it as a pure investment that you're going to want to rent it all the time. You can have it as a hybrid of, personal use and use as an investment in cash flow and downtime, and then other reasons where you may become an accidental landlord because you end up moving out of the area. Adrian, what are you seeing as far as why people buy short-term rentals and, maybe what makes them successful down there?
Well, so, in the beginning, and that beginning would be in the mid, 2015 or so. Of course, our price points were a lot lower then. And it was a lot easier just to get a house that was in an okay spot, put some okay furniture in it, put it up on, VRBO and Airbnb, and you just generated 3x what you would generate if you long-term rented it. And then there was a pretty significant shakeout in probably 2019. And then, of course, COVID shook out those that were serious from those that weren't. And so I think the mistake that people make is that, and just as you touched on, Maynard, is they don't quite calibrate what their financial objective is in the beginning. And so because they don't do that, then they end up buying something that they want, but they don't think about what everybody else would want if they were to short-term rent it. So the people that really get it right are those who, and this is what we spent a lot of time with you and Justin doing, is making sure we have the right location for year-round demand. Who comes to Phoenix in June, July, and August? And that's not a joke. I mean, that is a real serious question, and people do. So you got to find the right location. You also have to have a story. You have to differentiate. Just having a house that's nice with nice furniture isn't enough. It really does have to be Instagrammable. It has to have a story. It has to have something in it that somebody, the minute they walk in the door, they're going to want to, Maynard, this is you. Like, you walk in the door and you want to Instagram it. You want to get a quick, snippet out and get people excited about where they are and what they're experiencing. And that is really important, because that sort of viral factor of the house is really important. And it's not just the house and where it is, but it's also what it looks like. So sometimes people make the mistake of getting a house in a pretty good spot, and then they scrimp on the furniture, and they'll snag some old beds and, not quite get the story all the way translated through. Because the story is both where it is, what it looks like in pictures, what it feels like to live in it, what the experience is as a guest while you're there, how much does the host make you feel welcome and part of a community. There's lots of different pieces to the puzzle. So, those that do really well, these homes look, and yours is a perfect example, it looks spectacular. I mean, people want to share it before they even get there. And that's part of the real tough. And it's tough. Like Lisa said, when you walk in an empty house and you have to create a story for someone that's going to make them spend some significant money to stay there, it's good that you saw it as tough, because that means you're going to do it right. I think if people think it's easy, that's where it ends up being kind of mediocre and kind of middle of the road returns. And should I just long-term rent it, or maybe I should just sell it,
Adrian, I'm curious, you're talking about the story. So I'm curious to know more about what it is about, like how you go ahead and create that story. I mean, do you think it should be based on who the individual owners are? Or do you think it should be based on the aesthetics that house already brings? How do you determine what that is?
Yeah, so I think that, and I said in the beginning, you're not the only one who's shopping, and you can't be the only one who loves the house. But I think it's really important that you as owners do love the house, because that comes through in the experience. My personal cabins, I have an affinity for 70s, mid-century A-frames, 1960, 1970 A-frames. And so that's what my portfolio is in the White Mountains. And I'm passionate about sharing them, but not only sharing them, but I restored them. So that comes through. Guests gravitate to my listings because they can tell that I care, because it looks like my childhood. I grew up in the 70s. It's an updated version of that experience. So that's really important, that you as the owner feel something about what you're doing. And you're not just buying an okay house in an okay area with some okay furniture and you throw it online. Those will do okay, but that's sort of like the Courtyard by Marriott experience, right?
Yeah, it was really helpful for us. I know we had just one meeting where the three of us, me, Maynard, and Adrian, met, and it was like a visioning meeting, right? We all kind of came to that with, what do we like about the neighborhood and about the house, and what kind of feeling do we want to evoke here? And that kind of became our guidepost as we went.
Yeah, we love it. It was definitely an iterative process too, because we started with different colors and then morphed into this kind of blue. I don't even know how to describe that, but as like a main part of the theme, and that carries throughout. And I think as owners, like what Adrian's touching on, it feels really good to be really proud of your product, right? And then it shows when the guests come in and they experience it as well, right? And so the goal is for them to continue to experience it really well, write us 5-star reviews, and start charging them an arm and a leg because it's so awesome. So we're building towards that.
Yeah.
And I think, and also to your point, what I think, they say there's riches and niches. And Phoenix has a lot of niches, but I think the general population of, vacation travelers, short-term stay folk who come here, think of it as golf courses, maybe some hiking trails, lots of stucco, suburban sort of style, Tuscan kind of vibe. And we have plenty of that. We do. But we also have plenty of other things, like Maynard and Lisa's home is in the Biltmore Arcadia area, which was old orange orchards. So it's got this sort of oddly green, very kind of ranchy kind of vibe, because a lot of Phoenix used to be farms. Justin and Joanne's home is a 1928 historic National Register Spanish colonial. I don't think a lot of people think Phoenix has historic neighborhoods, and I know that Joanne, when she came down for the first visit, was surprised that we actually had what is historic. And so those niches are really cool, because there are always going to be people that are traveling that appreciate those things, and they don't want to stay in the stucco suburban kind of experience. Not to say that that doesn't do well when placed very well, but it's harder to tell a story in those with those homes, because it's harder to package up what that feels like.
Yeah, I think that's where the differentiation, like having that story, allows you to kind of differentiate your product. And you know, I just thought, I came from the hotel world many years ago, and you know, in the hotel world, each individual hotel brand has a very unique story that they're trying to portray. And
Courtyard by Marriott.
Well, exactly. I mean, that's a perfect example, Adrian. But if you're staying at a Four Seasons versus like a W hotel, I mean, you're talking two completely different brands and completely different feels, and they differentiate themselves. I mean, Four Seasons is seen as one of the highest luxury, everything, whereas the W is an experience. It's like a vibe you get with that. So I think it's no different than what we're talking about here.
So Adrian, you've kind of touched a little bit on, basically how to market these, right? So what do you think the impact of social media has been on, short-term rentals, Airbnbs, vacation properties?
Huge. Yeah. For those homes that actually have a story. Nobody's going to go into a rather boring suburban stucco ranch and take pictures and share it socially and get people engaged. It just doesn't happen. But if you're in the middle of the fifth largest city in the country and you're standing on a street, and Justin and Joanne's home is a quintessential sort of old Hollywood vibe, and I don't think people would ever think that existed.
I know I didn't.
It will be so. What's that? Yeah. It will be so contagious for people to share and see that kind of content. So it definitely is a big part of it. And you're doing it right when your guests are actually tagging you, sharing content, and getting people engaged. And so then, it just starts building on itself. Of course, there are all sorts of social components to the actual platform. Like Airbnb, their review component is really critical. And you have to understand all the algorithmic pieces of how those homes show up on map searches. And so there's a lot of that to it as well. But they do like it when listings are shared, Airbnb listings are shared socially, they do like that for your search results too.
Nice. I'm going to send it to 100 people and tell them to share it with everybody. So, will they
have
catch
them like
that?
it. Yeah. If it's a favorite, it helps a lot with Airbnb.
Yeah. It was amazing how the house really took off once we started getting a number of those 5-star reviews under our belt.
Beautiful,
Yeah. So let's talk about that, right? So somebody's trying to invest in an Airbnb, and they're like, okay, how quickly can I get this bad boy operating, right, and up and running and making some money? So our estimate, I think, originally was
3 months is what we gave ourselves.
3 months, and how did we do on that?
We were a couple months delayed, or a couple weeks delayed, but pretty much right on target, actually.
Yeah.
So we wanted to get it up and going before Thanksgiving so that we kind of had a couple trial stays before the peak season really hit.
Right on target. Like, seriously, this is kind of how it went.
It was a push.
It was like COVID delay, alternative furniture choice. It's getting delivered next week. No, it's getting delivered in 2023.
Supply chains are a legit issue. We actually, this sounds really weird, but we closed on our place last week, and we just ordered a piece of furniture that we can still cancel, but it is delayed all the way till mid-September.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah. We're probably not going to be using that piece of furniture.
I feel like that was one of the key lessons that we learned along the way, was just you can't get too attached to any one thing or idea, because this is a business. You want to get it up and running as quickly as possible, right? So there's just so many different things that could go right or wrong, and you have to pivot and be able to be flexible.
Yeah, decor choices are challenging as well. So yeah, go ahead, Adrian.
Yeah, I think you also need to look at the seasonality of the market where you're targeting your investment. Of course, Phoenix, our peak season is from this time-ish in January through the end of March. And usually you'd make 65, maybe 70% of your annual revenue in that period. So you want to make sure that you are shopping, and you guys were shopping in the summer, which was good timing because we were able to get it online before the end of the year, which is when the bulk of that sort of longer tail shopper starts booking. There's a lot of people that will book March in Phoenix in October or even September of the prior year, but there are still people that do shop. What you don't want to do is go in and start, go in and buy something in April and expect to hit peak season, because peak season won't be until the next January. And that's for this market. Every market's different. But if you do it right and you get the right spot and the right story, you will have a relatively smooth demand curve. You won't have the spike and then nothing for the summer. But that's definitely a key consideration, and making sure you have time to do it right, because what you don't want to do is not do it right. Go out of the gate, take some photos, get some okay reviews, not a great velocity, and then you're always struggling to catch up. You want to really come out of the gate, all guns blazing.
Yeah, you guys timed. You guys timed it perfectly, really, in terms of when you guys purchased, because you had that 3 months, and then all of a sudden you're at Thanksgiving or whatever it was, and you're ready to go, and now you're rocking and rolling. I picked the wrong time. I mean, just having closed now, realistically, we're going to completely miss the peak season. We're actually installing a pool in our backyard, so that's a big part of it. And I think for us, we're comfortable with the idea that, okay, we're going to be ready to go probably by the beginning to middle of the summer. And I think that's okay. We can kind of do our dry runs throughout the summer with some friends and see how it goes, and then be really ready to rock once we get into like October, November. Yeah,
definitely. And with construction, how the delays with all the contractors and stuff go. So I think it's nice you have that cushion.
Yeah.
Available.
Yeah, and if I may, the wrong time of you buying is going to feel like the right time when come summertime your house is appreciated $100,000 at the rate the Arizona market is booming. Right, Adrian?
I was going to say, you did buy at a period where we only had, actually you were the only offer. We expected multiple, but so there's that, right? But I think you are in the right spot for it. So if you were way out in a very difficult to sell summer period location, like Fountain Hills, if anybody knows the valley, northeast Phoenix, far northern suburb, really popular in the winter and really hard to sell in the summer, you'd be nervous. And that's probably one of the reasons why we didn't do that.
Yeah, for sure.
That was a guiding strategy.
So Adrian, it's clear you're an expert at this, right? So did you naturally find your way into having these kind of additional services with knowing, design and knowing all this market data about rentals, or is this something that came to you naturally that you kind of got interested in, or did you target it?
That's a good question. I actually have a background in marketing and public relations. Used to, in a prior life, lived in Chicago and in Seattle, and ran marketing teams for a tech company in Seattle most recently. But I also, during that prior life, I was in the hotel business. So I was director of brand marketing for Preferred Hotels and Resorts, which is a brand of independent luxury hotels and resorts worldwide. And so they are very niche-y in that unique hospitality experience. So I learned a ton from people that really know how to create experiences. And so that's part of where that came from. And so it all came together, as I was, working in the real estate business here and had clients asking me, hey, because Arizona, and I think this is an important part, tangential, we have the most liberal laws in the country as it relates to short-term rentals. We have a state law that prohibits municipalities from prohibiting short-term rentals.
Oh, wow.
They actually cannot control it at all. So, like Bend, Oregon has a lottery system, and you have to be a certain number of feet away from another short-term rental with a license. We don't have any of those restrictions here. So as clients started coming to me and saying, hey, I want to get in on this short-term rental business. How do I do it? It just sort of all started coming full circle. So, my analytical side, I was looking at a lot of data on where people were coming and when they were coming into town, where they were staying, what was driving the stays, but also the real estate, of course, the passion for that and the hunt, and then helping clients articulate and encapsulate and quantify what they wanted was always sort of a natural thing for me. And then I just started kind of putting it all together and helping people maximize those investments. And then the design piece is actually, I just kind of fell into that. I had a couple of clients that just said, they came into the house and they said, I don't even know what to do. Like, great, we got this great house. We think it's going to be great, but I don't even know where to start with the actual furnishing the house. And so I just started helping clients do that as well. And then in the meantime, I started my business up in the mountains too, where I was able to apply those passions to my own business too. Cool. And learn the intricacies of the short-term rental sites. And it's been a journey, but fun.
Yeah, and we are incredibly grateful for your well-rounded expertise, Adrian. It's been, a phenomenal experience, seriously. And
I'm honored. Thank you
completely agree.
Thank you for having me on the podcast.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned your background in hospitality too, because I know we've talked a lot so far about identifying the right place and then configuring it and setting it up. But now we're operational, right? And so actually being good hosts and interacting with the guests and creating that wow experience for them, because they are choosing our place over a luxury hotel and paying prices that are comparable. So,
yeah, it's attracting people into staying at your place, and then once you have them, you want to hook them and have them be completely satisfied.
Right.
So,
yeah, there's a lot to be said about just the responsiveness and the service you provide. And I can tell you, we're learning as we go, because you don't know what's going to come up until you have guests actually experiencing your property. A couple of tips that we did, or Justin was a guest and stayed and beat the heck out of the house, and no, but you bring in people, you try to get people to experience your house as a guest, and that certainly was helpful.
Well, it's simple things. It's like, where do you put your towel racks, and how are people going to utilize the outdoor spaces, and how is that going to blend in with what you do on the interior, and where are your dirty towels going to go, and there's so many different factors to consider. I mean, one of the things that I really loved about your place, and I know it's something you guys are continuing to develop and work on, is, the guide that you had available.
The house manual?
The house manual, exactly. And, your house is beautiful. I mean, let's be real, people. It's a gorgeous house. But this house, is very technologically advanced. It's got a beautiful stereo system and all the bells and whistles. But it's not super easy to use. Not like you just simply plug your phone in and press play and it's on you go. So that did take a lot of time to kind of figure that stuff out as well.
Absolutely.
I think that just goes to, that's a major thing. We're talking about little small things, or what really is what I think is the most important at the end.
I mean, it was hard for us to figure out, let alone thinking about people that don't utilize streaming media very often and technology.
Well, and that's where it's going to be even more unique for myself, because, as someone who's in his 40s, buying a house that's from 1928, it's going to appeal to a different audience. It might appeal to my audience as well, but it's going to appeal to a different audience than, let's say Maynard and Lisa's house is going to appeal to. And so from that perspective, I have troubles connecting with what that looks like. So that's where I'm going to have to really try and, figure it out. You use Adrian's, guidance to try and figure out what makes sense there. So.
And I think, the key is just anticipating. And, interestingly enough, guys, we've not had a single person ask us how to work that.
I know, right?
Well, it was because of all the effort spent into designing it and making sure it works. So
out there and went through it. And I think operationalizing, find your pickiest friend,
Yes.
stay, and really be picky. Because you want that pickiest guest not to be your first guest.
So is that why you guys wanted me there?
That's right.
Adrian.
It's an important part of it. And I think that as the world recovers from the COVID thing, the desire to feel, there's this interesting dynamic where the traveler wants to feel transported but safe and taken care of. And I think that short-term rentals have the opportunity to provide a level of that a hotel never could. Four Seasons is excellent. I mean, I know the brand very well, and those of us who've stayed there, they're anticipatory, but it sometimes feels a little clinical, because why would somebody who's working a front desk really care? Because it's not their house. But you, Lisa, and Maynard really care about your guest experiences, and that if that comes through, and it does, it's a game changer. You can never replicate that with a hotel, and I think that we're going to continue to see that shift. And those that have really well placed, well managed, well designed, well cleaned, another key part of it. Short-term rentals are just going to have returns on investments that exceed anything that you could get anywhere. And I think that's the brilliance of this concept.
I love that. I really do. Because, I mean, especially coming from the hotel industry, I mean, I always felt like I was very engaged in the hotel, but I can tell you right now, I'm going to treat my own personal investment property as a very different, experience for my guests. You couldn't have said that better. That was perfect.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic to hear. I mean, the trend of Airbnbs, do you think it's going to continue, and you think the demand will rise, or do you ever feel like there might be some saturation? Thinking just about the future behavior of how people are with work and how they vacation. What are your thoughts, Adrian?
Well, so saturation, the numbers down here are staggering, the number of short-term rentals. And I think the city of Scottsdale, I think there's 17,000 short-term rental properties. So is it saturated? Probably, but that doesn't mean there's not opportunity. I think in saturation, there's riches and niches, right? It's like, figure out what niche you want to go after. Make sure that you nail it on every aspect. So location, design, guest experience, you'll always have a market. And I've been to quite a few of the Vacation Rental Management Association meetings, and before COVID, the big buzz was, the hotel industry started off as very threatened by this concept. And so big cities like New York, Chicago, Seattle, San Francisco, lots of pushback, lots of reasons why cities are pushing back on these concepts. But the general consensus is at some point, one of the big hotel companies is going to buy one of the big short-term rental companies, and then suddenly there's not any problem with it. And so I think that travelers are going to want to feel, Lisa and Maynard's house, for example, we market that as a separate sort of a way to gather with a larger group of your family, but have your own separate spaces, but be connected. Travelers are always going to want to feel that. They're going to want to feel secure and safe, but transported. And those that do that with short-term rentals in a way that beats out the others in the market are going to always succeed. And as we start to see more and more people falling off of big hotel brands' affinity and switching over to short-term rental options, it's only going to become more of a high potential market. But there's going to be lots of very average, There already is. There's lots of average. And those people probably are going to figure out that they don't want to do it anymore. We're actually, as realtors, we're excited for the inventory down here. I hope that more people sell those homes, because we need those back on the market.
Yeah, it's almost like comparing taxi cabs to Uber.
Yeah.
Right. It's a very similar idea in the sense that, there was a reason why Uber became so uber popular, or Lyft for that matter. I know, good fun.
Dad joke number one, folks. Dad joke number one. Yeah.
But, it's true. I mean, taxis were very limiting, and, hotel rooms are very similar to that in the sense that, you can't have a family of four stay in a hotel room, very easily.
Right.
Even with my kids being 8 and 10, I mean, it's not like I can sit here and have my kids, comfortably fit in a room with 2 queen size beds with us. It's just, not feasible.
Yeah, or if you're going on vacation with your sisters and your parents and you have separate hotel rooms, okay, we'll meet down in the lobby at 9:30 tomorrow. Like, you don't get that
Right.
morning coffee experience and, all those.
Got to get out to the pool early and lay the
Yeah,
towels down.
exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, right now I'm planning a wedding down in Scottsdale, Adrian, and we've got a hotel block of 10 rooms. We're inviting like 90 some odd people. And I'm sweating it out with that hotel block because everybody wants to go stay at an Airbnb. I think part of that is like, more people, like my sister and her husband are probably going to stay with my mom. Well, they don't want to stay in a hotel room together, but they'll share a house, right? And so I think whatever saturation there might be, I think the awareness and the ease of short-term rentals, you've got your own private space, you don't have the concierge, but nobody uses that anyway. I can figure out restaurants and whatever on my phone. I don't necessarily need to go down to the lobby to ask somebody, right? So I think the benefits of it, the privacy, more people, especially if you got a pool, right? I mean, these are all things that you're just not going to get with a hotel for a comparable price.
Right.
I think one thing that we haven't really touched about at this point is, we're talking about differentiation, right? And you want to differentiate yourself from other properties to be able to charge more money, and be able to create more revenue. And so, like, you look at like the hotel world. I mean, there's a reason why Four Seasons or Fairmont or whoever charges $500, $600, $700, $800 a night, whereas whereas the Marriott Courtyard charges $200 a night. Well, it's no different than Airbnb. And if you want to buy a property where you can create that story, and you can create that experience for your guests, you're able to charge that much more. And therefore create more cash flow and becomes that much more of a solid investment.
Yeah, I can tell you, though, it's a little bit stressful. So, if you want to think about what's our Airbnb experience been like and, the exciting part of zero down to $1.3 million investment, and it's all exciting and smooth. And, of course, there's little bumps in the road, but that is really exciting, right? That's the power of real estate. Now, when we created a budget, that's one of the tips, guys. Make sure you have a budget.
Yeah, good point.
And then try not to blow the budget too much.
Try.
But, we had a budget, and we had to furnish a 4-bedroom, 3.5 bath, 3,500 square foot house, and we have a pool guy, a lawn guy, a handyman guy. We have a lot of guys and girls too, by the way. So, they happen to be guys.
We have quite the team for sure that we don't have for our house here in Seattle for some reason.
Yeah, we have quite the team. So, I remember just thinking outflow, and we got a credit card to go towards the outflows for the Airbnb, and it felt like I was paying that thing off every 3 weeks. So it costs a lot, but where are we today now, though? So you were just looking at the numbers on the way in, right? And we really just had one rental Thanksgiving week. We had a rental over December, and then here we are at the beginning of January, and we did not have too much booked yet. And I was, getting worried that as far as the prime season, we still weren't that booked.
That's right, because we had our first guest around Thanksgiving time and took a little while for them to get the review in. And once we started getting a few reviews, that the algorithms of Airbnb and really took off, and the reservations started coming in. I think after the holidays too, people started really focusing on their spring travel. But right now,
it got really cold in the Midwest and the East.
Yeah.
Yeah, they had a big spell.
As soon as it goes below zero in Chicago,
Yeah.
you just start to see people.
That'll do it.
Interesting.
So here's a number. Lisa was running numbers just to show, and you can share with everybody what the numbers look like as of today.
Yeah, so right now we only have one unbooked weekend all the way through the middle of May, which is
Wow.
pretty crazy to me. That's to look at the calendar of bookings at this point, which would generate $90,000 of rental in, top line, rents.
Yeah, so that's amazing. I'm like,
Yeah.
is the math right? I mean, that's $90,000 in 6 months.
Wow.
That's $15,000 a month roughly in revenue.
Wow.
And granted, we invested a lot to get there. There are other expenses that people can probably Google
Right.
to know about Airbnb fees and management fees and things like that. But we're pretty excited how it's turning out.
That's amazing.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, that's good for me to hear.
I'm like, how long are you guys going to still be selling homes
Start with
then?
the outflow, right, Justin?
What's that?
Yeah.
What's that, Adrian?
As you start with the outflow, it's good to hear about the inflow.
Oh,
Yeah.
the outflow. Oh, yes.
Well, I mean, you're tested as a real estate agent. You get a deal and you're like, woohoo, it's coming in. And then you're like, where's the next one coming? You know.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But yeah, with all that money up front, I'm sure it's a.
Yeah.
Well,
you
and
know.
the anticipation, like, it was so nerve-wracking waiting for our first review to come in, right? Because you're like, will people like our product that we put together? Are they gonna, pick it apart or what? And yeah, so
That's why you're going to do well, because you care.
Love
You
that.
do care, and you do want to hear, and you want them to love it, and that is a really key part of what will set you apart as hosts, because that'll come through with the guests every single time. There'll be some that don't seem to care, but that doesn't matter. They just need to know you care. And the on the budget front, making sure that you outfit the house in a way that doesn't look like you didn't care. And it's hard to make a house feel that you cared on a budget. But a rough budget of $20 to $25 a square foot on furnishings, all in. If you're painting a wall, you're adding maybe some vintage pieces in a historic home like Justin's. The artwork, the quality of the mattresses, the linens, the towels, how many towels there are. I know the Costco run was hilarious because it was just like carts of towels.
Yeah.
But it's funny when you do go to Costco and you do that, people come up like Airbnb.
because you need duplicates of everything, right? So Adrian had like 4 carts of linen, I
Right.
think.
Yeah. So, but that upfront investment is really important because it does feel big. It is big, but it's really important to getting that return ramping. If you don't spend it, you're not going to get the ramp, and you'll probably end up with an okay investment.
And I remember you saying like every piece of furniture doesn't need to be wow. I mean, you want good, durable pieces that are of high quality, but like get some pieces that are memorable and something that's different where people go, oh, that's cool, and just stand out a little bit.
That's something that I'm actually going through right now. So as Adrian knows, when we closed last week, we're in the process of trying to furnish this home and really figure out what that looks like. And I know one thing that you guys did really successfully was, kind of the idea of dividing and conquering, and allowing each other to focus on different things, and kind of meeting in the middle, because it can be really challenging for a relationship to kind of go through this. And I'm experiencing that right now, but it's fun. We're enjoying it still, but I know for my wife Joanne, she very much is of the mindset where this is becoming a bit more of an emotional journey for her, which is a bit of a challenge when you're looking at it as a pure investment. But I think the more she's getting into it, the more she's realizing, okay, this is not only just an investment, this is actually something I really, really love. And I think to your point, Adrian, that's going to be something that's going to come through in what we're presenting to the people. But at the same time, it's a challenge. Because not only does the budget kind of, not go out the window, but it becomes more challenging. And then it also creates stress with, what needs to get done. So what did you guys kind of learn from that process? Because you guys are, let's call it 6 months ahead of me. So,
Well, like you said, divide and conquer. That was definitely a relationship survival strategy, as well as just time management too, because there's just so much to do. Everything has to be built from the ground up, right? And so just to be able to get it done. I think one of us would take the lead on something and then kind of present, hey, here's what I'm seeing. Here's some options. What do you like?
Yeah, there are a lot of decisions to make, like thousands, literally, right?
Yeah.
And if you and your partner are collaborating on every single decision, that's 1,000 potential arguments.
Yes, at least.
So, maybe, what worked for us is Lisa just really taking the lead on 90% of it, and us having checkpoints.
Oh, he was honest.
And I'm serious, this is, there's one boss in this relationship and she's right over there.
Maynard can have all the audio visual. He cares a lot about that, so he can take the lead there.
Oh, yeah. Spotify, baby. Yeah. So
yeah,
anyway, we got through it.
That's so true, though. The audio-visual, Joanne's like, I don't care what size TV you want. Just, don't make it gaudy.
So you went with like 80 inches, like what you've got at home, or
No.
Yeah.
I'm being more reasonable.
Let's make note of that. I only spend on my time on one item, and we have had not one complaint about the audio visual. All right, potential argument brewing right now.
It's all good.
Yeah.
But anyways, Adrian, I know I've thoroughly enjoyed the experience in working with you and just trying to find the Airbnb for us to make happen. And, for us, it was a really kind of spur of the moment thing. I mean, we'd been looking into buying a place for weeks, and then we decided to come down over close to Christmas, and, Joanne was needing a little bit of convincing to try and buy something down there. But when we got down there, she was just astounded with the options that were available to us, and the type of lifestyle that you could have there, or like type of investment property. So what do you think it was? Obviously Maynard and Lisa had a very different experience than we did, but, what do you think it was that kind of helped Joanne get over that cliff and decide that, hey, this is actually a really cool place that we want to invest our money in and utilize it as an investment?
So I think that Phoenix is a lot cooler than people think. I think that's probably a very safe thing to say. And I think Maynard and Lisa felt this too in the Arcadia Biltmore spot where they are. They're very proximate to some pretty cool, interesting micro breweries and gastropubs and speakeasies. And as we started venturing further into Central Phoenix, where your home is, I think Lisa and Maynard enjoyed it even more. They were finding things that they didn't expect to find, with sort of a sense of style that I think many don't think of when they think of Phoenix. I think they think of Phoenix as a big, sprawling suburban area with some decent restaurants, but we actually have some pretty cool stuff, and the city's evolving into its own sort of personality. And so I think Joanne definitely was surprised by that. And these historic neighborhoods where you chose to buy are like storybook, like you just don't expect it. And I think what was really important about your shopping exercise is that we also, and Joanne was looking through things through a lens of like, not only do I want this, but will someone else want it, so that it makes it worthwhile, so that I can get even more return financially from what I want. And there was another home that we looked at, and it was in North Scottsdale, and it was beautiful. It was just beautiful. It was probably it might have even been right at the top of the list. But it was just a little far off axis for year-round demand. And you guys looked at each other and said, we love this, but it's not right for all of us, and all of us being not just you, but your guests and your investment. And that's, I think, what was the final sort of tipping point. But I think that people don't realize that Phoenix is as cool as it is. I think that's probably what got Joanne.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and I mean, to be very candid, we both saw this house that we ended up purchasing online, and we both immediately were like, wow, this place is so cool. We needed to, take a look at it. And it was the second house we looked at, if I remember correctly. And it kept being the one that we'd go back to. But Adrian's right. I mean, it was the last house we saw was a close competitor to the one that we ended up purchasing. But there was something about this house that just kept kind of putting it to the top of the list. Number one was, location is obviously such a huge factor when you're purchasing an investment property. But for us, it was, kind of that ability to be able to differentiate yourself, differentiate your, the story that you have, and, really create something super, super cool that you're not going to see anywhere else.
Right.
So.
And that you'll want to spend time in as owners too.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the ideal, right? When you can, and Lisa and Maynard have this too, when they're at their home here, they're like on permanent vacation. Like they're so happy. And that's the best part of it.
We're happy whenever Maynard gets on the team meetings, whenever he's down there. So.
He's on the slide, water slide.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing I'm learning to do, work remotely.
Yeah.
So it's a work in process. But I figured out the water slide, though. The one I wanted to tear down initially.
Oh, my gosh.
That would have been not a good decision. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the funny thing is, like, that's something you don't really see in a lot of Airbnbs is that water slide, and that's so cool. And the little grotto that you guys have. I mean, it's such a unique little differentiator.
That was the first thing that I saw when he showed me the exterior photo. I was like, "Oh, is that a water slide?" And he's like, "Yeah, I think we're gonna take that out for insurance purposes." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh."
So two things we didn't do. We didn't take down the water slide, and we haven't installed a hot tub because we've learned that we can heat the pool up to like 84, 87, and most people are satisfied with that. So
Because we installed a massive
gas
heater.
But but still though, I think the hot tub, which thought was a certainty, was going to cost at least 30 to 40 grand, and so that was one cost cutting measure that we took in the process. So we've talked about ours and some of our lessons learned. The Phoenix area, right, is pretty widespread, and there are what price ranges do you see investment opportunities that really make sense if somebody's looking for kind of pure financial investment?
Yeah, so it's all over the place. I think that you can still find, there was a historic 2-bedroom home in Central Phoenix that was on the market over the weekend. They had something like 19 offers, but it was listed at $350 for 1,000 square feet, which I thought was a steep deal.
So did 19 other people.
Almost free. And I think that could have been an excellent short-term rental. And I wouldn't be surprised if whoever bought it, and I'm sure they probably paid more than $4 for it, but even still, you can generate a significantly positive return on investment with that level of investment. And then, of course, you can find homes over $1 million all day long. But the $1 million homes don't always mean that they're going to be the best returns. Because a lot of the city is built in rings. And so the further out you go, the newer you go, the further out you are. And, the development, the city is definitely becoming more of a core. The city of Phoenix, city of Tempe, Old Town Scottsdale are the sort of 3 hubs of commercial activity. You want to be close to those commercial hubs, and you also want to be close to major medical facilities. It's all part of the magic of where the right location is, because we get a lot of medical tourism. And so that helps in the summer because people can't plan medical needs necessarily. So they'll come when they have to. And if it's July in Phoenix, when it's 119, they're here and they need a place to stay. So, it does run the gamut. And, the coolest thing about this city, I think, or one of the cool things about it is we have such a range of architecture and styles and experiences. I mean, it's really everything. Anything you could think of, you can find in this market. Interestingly, King County is one of our larger feeder markets now. It used to not be in the top 10, but I think it's now in the top 5. So Los Angeles, San Jose, Chicago,
Crazy.
Of course.
Yeah.
But County is now up there. We have good weather. It's just 3 months of challenging good weather.
Yeah, so that's great news for our audience, right? Who's tuning in? They might want to go, okay, what do I do? How much does it cost to do my first Airbnb? And what's the Arizona market like? Is it just $1.4 million homes in Justin's home, or what are my opportunities there? The market is every analysis or poll I've seen has Phoenix as one of the top 5, short-term rental markets, for the foreseeable future.
It was one of the fastest to correct after COVID. It's built for distancing. So when people wanted to be distant, where else to be distant than in a large city like Phoenix, where you can have a nice big house in the middle of a neighborhood and you don't have to see anybody. But we also have an urban core and a lot of cultural things going on here that make it a good place to be year round. And of course, we have spring training and the Phoenix Open, Waste Management Open, and the Barrett-Jackson Auto Auction, which is going on now. I mean, there's big draws, right? It's Super Bowl next year. By the way, we need to get those rates figured out, guys.
Super Bowl.
Yeah, we could do a whole segment on pricing strategy, probably.
Yeah, that would be a good one.
Well, one thing as well is the idea of HOAs. And I mean, clearly in Phoenix, there's a ton of HOAs, and a lot of communities, single family houses included, have HOAs, which therefore restrict short-term rentals. So yeah, what are your thoughts, Adrian? I mean, I know for me, it was an automatic, because I'm in real estate, I knew automatically I'm not going to look at anything with an HOA, but what's your experience?
Excellent point. And so in our state law, the municipalities have no teeth, so they cannot legislate against short-term rentals. The only entity that can do that is an HOA. And so when you think about the development rings I was talking about, as the city grew, much of the newer developments on the further rings of the city are in managed communities with HOAs that almost always prohibit short-term rentals. And there is the issue with bad actors. And there's owners that really don't care. They only do it for financial returns, and they don't care about their neighborhoods, and they allow anything to go on in their homes, and they create problems for the neighborhood, the neighbors, the city police. It goes on and on. So HOAs can and do prohibit, and so many times they have 30 days or more length of stay requirements. And so if you're looking and there's an HOA that doesn't yet have a CC&R that prohibits short-term rentals, it's likely that they will. And so it's a risky move if you're going to invest in a short-term rental in a neighborhood that has an HOA that doesn't yet prohibit it, because they could. Yeah, it's a great point. So, the downside is that the neighborhoods that don't have HOAs are the ones that attract the short-term rentals, and that's where the bad actors can come into play. So it's really important that you develop a real keen sense for your neighborhood and make sure that your guests see themselves as neighbors and not as visitors. And if you do that, you'll win, because your neighbors won't have issues. Police won't get called. You won't get in hot water with your neighbors and create, issues for everybody. So it's easy to work around, but HOAs in the state here are the only entity that can prohibit short-term rentals.
That was something that we did pretty quickly. Was we wanted to get out there and meet the neighbors right away and make sure, let them know, break the news. This is going to be an Airbnb, but it's also our home, and we want to treat it like that. And it's important for us to be good neighbors. And we have a property manager who lives nearby, and we're installing noise monitoring software or meters, whatever.
Meters, yeah.
Yeah. Just,
Yeah,
and then
so far, so good.
there are eyes and ears as well. I know, my neighbors contacted me to let me know a tree fell down or little things, so it's great.
Yeah.
We actually just met our neighbors in the perfect house next door, Adrian. And they were absolutely amazing people. We kind of let them know what our intention for the house was, and we had some really good conversations. But, it was really cool, because they were saying, oh, yeah, we're going to have a lot of family coming, and we'll probably rent your house from you guys, too.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, first guess, there you go.
Well, cool, guys. This has been a really good discussion. Great to get a lot of input, and I think the audience has gotten some good tips here. So as we wrap up, maybe we can share what we might think are maybe some of the 5 don'ts if you're going to go buy an Airbnb, or, the 5 major tips. We can maybe go around if anybody has any thoughts on that. Adrian, you want to start?
Yeah, don't be the only ones falling in love with the house. You've got to think about all those people that are potential guests, and they need to love it too.
I think, part of that is the emotion that can go into purchasing a home, any home. And, especially when you're purchasing an Airbnb investment or investment property at all, it really needs to come down to the financial decision. But, I think the one difference is when you're purchasing an Airbnb, something where you're going to utilize it a little bit yourself, the emotion can come into it, but you kind of have to always go back to, it being a financial decision first and foremost.
Yep.
Yeah. I'd say just don't let it become a black hole, through that whole setup process. Have a timeline, have a budget, and just keep kind of going back to that. It's progress over perfection, right? Be flexible.
Cool. And I think for me, decor choices can range. Pink blankets work on beds. I objected to a pink blanket at one point, and it's still there, and it seems to be going well.
Pink or coral?
Salmon, maybe?
Salmon,
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, that's a point about, thinking of your audience and not you personally. So.
Yeah, blanket converts. If that photo will convert to some bookings, we're going to keep the blanket in the photo.
Oh yeah, heck yeah. We'll put that photo up for everybody when we publish the podcast. Yeah. All right, so Adrian, thank you for coming on. If people want to get a hold of you, they want to reach out, and what's the best way for them to reach you?
So they can shoot me an email at adrian@coolphxliving.com. So it's PHX like the airport.
Right on. That makes sense.
All right.
Okay,
Yeah.
everybody.
And thank you again, Adrian. You were fantastic to work with, and you're going to continue to be fantastic to work with. But I mean, obviously, Maynard and Lisa had nothing but great things to say, and
Likewise.
same thing here. So
Well,
An
it's
honor.
almost
Nice
5
to meet
o'clock here, so go ahead, Adrian.
Nice having you guys around.
Yeah.
Nice to meet
Thank
you,
you.
Adrian.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun, so I think it's happy hour time, guys. All right, thanks, everybody.
All right.
cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.